For 2 years, I endured Victor's infidelities. I knew about his romantic escapades, but I had a plan. I helped him with the business, supported him in every possible way, and thanks to my efforts, our knitwear factory tripled in size. 5 years ago, Victor and I signed a prenuptial agreement. Initially, it was a joke, but the contract stated that if either party caught the other cheating, all jointly acquired assets would pass into the hands of the injured party. Victor had probably forgotten about this contract, but I knew, and I waited until the very end, ensuring there would be enough to take when we divorced. This was my revenge. We met Victor at a wedding. He was a charming and ambitious young man. We quickly hit it off and soon became inseparable. Victor did everything for me. Organized romantic surprises and supported me after I finished university. We decided to start our own business. Our knitwear factory was born in a tiny office with rented desks and chairs. We worked tirelessly, sometimes sleeping right there. Victor always strived for me, and I felt his love and care. He was my partner, my friend, my rock. We went through hardships together and celebrated every success. Over the years, our business grew. We rented a 1,000 square meter space, hired more employees, and established production. Our turnover exceeded $1 million a year. I was waiting for the company to reach this level so I could take everything in the divorce. Everything changed 3 years ago when Victor hired a secretary, Helena. Helena was a very beautiful woman. She performed every task flawlessly and quickly won Victor's trust. Soon, a romance began between them. Helena didn't aim for my place as she loved a free life. Victor gave her gifts. They often traveled together on business trips, and he paid for her rented apartment. She was well set up. With each passing day, I felt Victor drifting further away from me. He became cold and indifferent. I knew he was no longer the man who once strove for me, but I didn't show him my feelings because I had a plan. One day, Victor informed me that he was going on a business trip to China to order new equipment. "I'm leaving for China for a week, Anna," he said at dinner. "We need to sign a contract for the new equipment for our company." "Of course, Victor. Anything for the business?" I replied calmly, hiding my true feelings. He indeed flew to China, but not alone. His secretary, Helena, with whom he had a long-standing romantic relationship, went with him. "Will you miss me?" Victor asked, hugging me before he left. "Of course I will," I replied with a slight smile. "Hurry back." After he left, I immediately began executing my plan. I contacted my former classmate, Mark, who was a photographer. I didn't know who else I could turn to. Mark had been living in China for 8 years, and I proposed an adventure to him. Initially, he didn't want to take on the job, as espionage is strictly penalized in China, but I offered him good pay. I also paid for his hotel, where Victor and his mistress were staying. "Mark, I need photos of my husband with his mistress. I will pay you well for this," I said, handing the photographer the money. "Anna, this is risky. Espionage here is severely punished." Mark hesitated. "I understand, but I really need this evidence. I'll cover all your expenses and add extra for the risk," I insisted. "All right, I'll do my best, Anna. You can count on me," Mark replied, accepting the money. Mark checked into the same hotel as Victor and Helena. He carefully thought out his plan. Photographing with a professional camera was too risky and noticeable, so he decided to use his smartphone. Mark began following the couple, trying not to attract attention. One morning, Mark noticed Victor and Helena leaving their room. They were heading to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. Mark sat at a nearby table and pretended to read the menu. He deftly activated his smartphone camera and began taking pictures of them. The photos showed their smiles, tender touches, and passionate glances. At one point, Victor glanced around and noticed that one of the hotel guests had a camera pointed their way. Mark quickly hid his phone and pretended to look away. Victor squinted but didn't pay much attention, deciding it was just a coincidence. He returned to his conversation with Helena. After breakfast, Victor and Helena headed to the pool. Mark followed them, trying to keep his distance. He took pictures when the couple was sitting on the sun loungers, hugging and kissing. Mark knew that every photo could be crucial evidence in my hands. That same evening, Victor and Helena decided to take a walk downtown. Mark again followed them, capturing every step. He tried to be inconspicuous, hiding among the tourists and pretending to be just sightseeing and taking pictures. At one point, when Victor and Helena stopped at a street cafe for coffee, Mark took several shots, showing them looking like a happy couple. However, at some point, Victor noticed Mark again. He began to suspect they were being followed. Victor approached Mark and asked, "Excuse me, are you by any chance photographing us?" Mark, maintaining his composure, smiled and replied, "Oh no, not at all. I'm a tourist taking pictures of the city. If you'd like, I can show you my shots." Victor, slightly embarrassed, apologized and returned to Helena. Mark breathed a sigh of relief and continued his work. 2 days later, I received the photographs. They showed Victor and Helena kissing, holding hands, and looking very happy together. These photos were direct proof of his infidelity. "Excellent work, Mark. Thank you," I said, examining the pictures. "Glad to help. Good luck to you," Mark replied. However, I didn't rush to file for divorce. I waited another 2 months until the equipment arrived and was installed. Only then did I go to a lawyer with the evidence. "Hello, I have a prenuptial agreement and direct proof of infidelity. Please help me file a petition for divorce," I told the lawyer, handing over the contract and the photos. "You have proof?" the lawyer asked. "Yes, here it is," I replied, showing the pictures. The court reviewed the case and ruled in my favor. All the property, the business, 2 cars, and the huge apartment remained mine. Victor was left with nothing. That evening, when Victor returned home from work, he saw his belongings stacked by the door, and silence reigned in the apartment. I was sitting in the living room with a cup of tea in my hands, watching him intently. "Anna, what's going on?" Victor asked, bewildered. "This is the end, Victor. I filed for divorce and the court left all the assets to me," I replied calmly. "What? How? Why?" Victor stammered, breathless. "You forgot about our prenuptial agreement. You cheated on me, and now everything we acquired together belongs to me," I said, standing up and approaching him. Victor couldn't believe his ears. He remembered the contract we signed 5 years ago and realized that everything was lost. "Anna, forgive me, I was a fool." Victor tried to justify himself. "It's too late, Victor. You made your choice and now you have to live with the consequences. Leave," I said coldly, pointing to the door. Victor, stunned and humiliated, grabbed his things and left the apartment, not knowing where to go or what to do next. Left alone, I felt relief. I was no longer a prisoner of an unfaithful husband. Now I was free and could start a new life. The next day, I arrived at the office of our knitwear factory, which Victor and I had built together. The employees were surprised to see me alone. "Good morning, Anna Vladimirovna. Where is Victor Nikolaevich?" the secretary asked. "Victor no longer works here. I will be managing the company now," I replied firmly. "And you, Helena, are fired. Pack your things and you can look for an apartment with Victor." I walked into my new office and sat at the desk. Documents requiring my attention were laid out on the table. I sighed and began to work. There was no room for regret or sadness in my heart. I knew I had done the right thing and that a new life full of opportunities and achievements awaited me. "You are a strong woman, Anna," I quietly said to myself, smiling. Several months passed. I successfully managed the factory, achieving new successes and signing profitable contracts. I was completely focused on work and hired a new secretary. One evening, when I returned home after a stressful workday, I heard someone knocking at the door. I opened it and saw Victor. "What do you want, Victor?" I asked coldly. "Anna, I want to talk," Victor said sheepishly. "We have nothing to talk about, Victor. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences," I replied. "Please, Anna, I know I was wrong. I want to fix everything." Victor began to plead. "Nothing can be fixed now. Go to your Helena," I said firmly and closed the door. I returned to the living room and sat on the couch. There were no tears or pain in my eyes. I knew I had done the right thing, and that a new life full of opportunities and achievements awaited me.